Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome this afternoon to The Law and You, where we discuss legal issues affecting people living in the state of New York. And sometimes the discussion goes to Guyana. But specifically this afternoon, we'll be limiting our discussion to issues affecting us in the state of New York. I'm a little bit late this afternoon, but I'm happy to be here. I encourage you to share the live, share the link, and we will get straight into our program this afternoon discussing the law and you this afternoon. We'll be discussing the law and you, and I have a special guest that will be joining us in a few minutes, and we will discuss traffic violations. So this is attorney. I'm sorry, guys. The commercial is, I don't know, the operator probably having technical difficulties with the commercial. This is attorney Shellon Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100. Okay, guys, that was a quick commercial there for you, and welcome. Good afternoon. Welcome to this program this afternoon, The Law and You. I am your host, Shellon Washington, and we will be discussing, again, legal issues that are affecting you as a citizen either in the United States. And from time to time, we discuss legal issues affecting people in Ghana. We do interjurisdiction. But today, we're limiting the discussions to traffic offenses, traffic matters that are affecting people living in the state of New York. And as I said before, last week, I said I will be bringing a guest on here today. And today, I do have a guest. I have my colleague here today. His name is James Williamson. And although I've said before, I've told you I am not a criminal attorney, but I do have my colleague, and he is a criminal attorney. He's associated with the Washington Law Firm. He serves as off counsel to my firm. So today I have him here with me, and he will be discussing those traffic offenses issue that will be, from time to time, they affect people. So guys, I would encourage you, share the link today, share the live, get more. We will wait a few minutes to get the viewers up. Share the link. I encourage you, because we're going to be providing some very, very interesting information. And as I said, this is a program for educational purpose only. It's not intended to provide you with legal advice. If you do need legal advice, I encourage you to either call my office, or if you already have an attorney, call the attorney's office to ensure that your situation, which may be unique to what we're going to be discussing here this afternoon, may not be exactly the type of advice you need. You may need something else. So I encourage you, this is just for educational purposes only. We want to keep you informed. We want to keep you educated as to how the law could affect you. It could affect your status as an immigrant. It could affect you in so many ways. So we want to get that off straight across to you this afternoon. And I'm going to get right into my program this afternoon. Like I said before, I have a guest here with me. His name is James Williamson, and I will be bringing James Williamson. He will be joining us any minute now. There he is. Hi, good afternoon to you, James Williamson. Could you say good afternoon to the viewers? We have people listening from all over. I see there's people from Canada, New York, Guyana. Good afternoon to you all. And today we have James Williamson. Hi, James Williamson. Good afternoon.
Mrs. Washington, good afternoon. Good afternoon to all the viewers out there. I hope everybody's enjoying their weekend. And let's get started. So we're going to talk about the vehicle and traffic law today. Is that correct?
Yes. Today we're going to be discussing issues that you are specialized in. I know that you do practice criminal law, and from time to time, when people call the office regarding criminal issues, those clients do come to you, they do speak with you. But today we're going to be discussing, like I said before, we're going to be discussing traffic infractions, traffic offenses, traffic violations, traffic misdemeanor. And this afternoon, I want you to tell my viewers, what are some of the most frequent traffic offenses you have seen almost on a daily basis when you go to court?
Well, that's important. Everybody's going to be affected by driving in the state of New York. What I see mostly are going to be two major traffic infractions. That's going to be driving while intoxicated. That means that you've had too much to drink and you got behind the wheel and you were caught over the legal limit, which is a 0.08. So driving while intoxicated is number one. Number two is going to be an aggravated unlicensed operation. If you get pulled over for any other traffic infraction, whether that be speeding, you run a red light, run a stop sign, if your license is revoked, suspended, and a lot of times this can happen without you knowing, then you will get a traffic infraction for driving without a license. It's called an aggravated unlicensed operation.
Right. So since we're discussing two major issues, and I want the audience to be aware, this is DWI, driving while intoxicated, and unlicensed driver. And I'm going to expound on some of the things that can affect immigrants as it relates to both. But before we get into this, I want to ask Mr. Williamson, I'm going to show you the section here, section 1192 of the Vehicle and Traffic Act. So you look at the section there. Could you expound a little bit more? I'm not sure if you can see the section properly, but I know you're familiar with it. If you could explain a little bit to the audience, a little bit more in detail as it regards to operating the vehicle while under the influence of alcohol. Could you go into a little bit detail on the section?
Yes. So pretty much Ms. Washington has it up. It's going to be Vehicle and Traffic Law 1192. Under 1192, there's about 4 subdivisions, but there's 3 important ones. Let's jump to 1192 too. Usually that's a violation where you blew a 0.08 or higher. Everybody remembers from their driving test that that was the legal limit. So first things first, it's not illegal to drink and drive. What's illegal is to drink and drive over the legal limit of a 0.08. That's an 1192-2. And 1192-3 is the same thing, but the difference between those infractions are that you usually blew into what they call a blood alcohol content of a 0.808 or higher. If you didn't blow, you still get an 1192. And the way that the police officer is going to be able to tell if you don't have a blood alcohol content test is by either giving you a field sobriety test where you'll be asked to walk in a straight line maybe, or they can just smell the alcohol on your breath. So those are the differences, Ms. Washington, between the misdemeanors.
Okay. Now, I also would like for you to explain a little bit more in detail the other offense that we referenced earlier, which is the unlicensed operation of a motor vehicle. Could you explain a little bit more on this section to the audience?
I sure can. Believe it or not, a VTL section 511A. It's a class A misdemeanor. You see this frequently. A lot of times people don't even know what's happened. It's an aggravated, unlicensed operation. So usually the way people get these tickets is, let's say that you're driving, you hit the brakes, a cop pulls up behind you, and you have one of your stop lamps out. Or you try to signal for a left-hand turn, and everybody knows when that signal starts flashing really quickly, that means that a light is out. If a cop pulls you over and you're not aware that you have your license suspended, they will give you a ticket under Vehicle and Traffic Law section 511A. That is a class A misdemeanor, and you see that frequently. Now, some of you might be asking, how would I have a suspended license and not know? Okay, well, a lot of times there's 2 major areas that you're going to see this. Unpaid child support. Some people can have a license suspension and not know. They might not have checked their mail, and the DMV alerted you that your license was suspended. Other times you went through tolls without paying them, and you didn't get the notice that you had outstanding tolls. You'll get your license suspended like that. Those are the two major areas that you'll see people not being aware of an aggravated unlicensed operation.
Right. So I know some of the audience listening and they're wondering, we're giving them this information. And if there's anybody there listening that might be facing the possibility of either of these offenses, what advice would you provide to that person right now? What would you tell them?
All right. Well, look, let's section these off, because I would give different advice for somebody that was charged with an aggravated unlicensed operation as opposed to a DWI. Now, with an aggravated unlicensed operation, it's possible to go in there and handle that by yourself sometimes. I would always recommend going in with a lawyer, but you have a little bit more leeway with an aggravated unlicensed operation. A lot of times you can get off with a reduced charge. A reduced charge is what you're usually looking for to dispose of a misdemeanor violation. And what this is a misdemeanor traffic violation. You want to get that down to a 509. Usually the prosecutor will give you that if you can show proof of clearance. And by proof of clearance, I mean that you paid all fines and all surcharges to the state of New York on your license. Now let's jump to the other side. Driving while intoxicated is serious business. You don't want to take that lightly. You don't want to ignore it. I would always advise going into court with an attorney and never going it alone. Sometimes you can have your license revoked for way too long. And of course, having your license revoked is going to affect your family life. It's going to affect your education. It's going to affect a lot of things. A lot of times these revocations can go on for anywhere from 6 months to a year. But the most important thing, and Ms. Washington can expound on it a little bit more, is if you have too many DWIs, if you had an aggravating factor like property damage, maybe you injured somebody, that can be considered a crime involving moral turpitude, which can have adverse immigration consequences. So you need to contact an immigration attorney, and you'll be able to best facilitate that through an experienced DWI attorney.
Right. And that brings me to the issue which you mentioned earlier. You alluded to it earlier when you were speaking about child support, which takes you back to family law issues.
Exactly.
Unpaid child support can affect your driver's license. A lot of people don't even know. Sometimes the license, they don't pay the child support. They get a child support order on them and they refuse to pay it. And that can have very, very severe adverse effects on you, one of which includes the suspension of your driver's license. And then you have the other issue, which you just mentioned, the immigration side. If you have too many traffic offenses, that could go, it's a combination, crimes of moral turpitude. I don't know, some of you might have heard that before. It might be the first time you're hearing about crime of moral turpitude, but a crime of moral turpitude is something that can hinder you from being adjusted in this country, or even being able to, let's say you committed it and you left and you went back home to your home country. It could prevent USCIS from being able to grant your I-130, your family-based petition, that is. And in the sense of you being in the United States, you have a family-based petition filed on your behalf, but you committed too many traffic violations. Let's say you have 2 DWIs and then you have one offense of driving while unlicensed or while your license was suspended. Right. The combination of them, 3 or more offenses, can be used to determine that you cannot be adjusted. Your status is not adjustable in this country. And then therefore, even if you get an I-130 that was approved, the US government could say, well, we still cannot approve your 485 to adjust you, to allow you to be a permanent resident in the United States. So these are things you have to be careful, because all these traffic violations and offenses, they can affect you in one way or the other. If it's a one-time thing, fine. But if it's multiple counts, that could run you into a lot of trouble. So the information that Mr. Williams is providing here this afternoon, I think it's very insightful in providing you some guidance as immigrants, number one. And number two, just as, living in New York, in the state of New York, some of the things you need to do to retain your license, to stay safe, to be able to go back and forth to work or do the normal things you might be doing on a daily basis, driving your car. All right. So the other thing that I want to ask you, Mr. Williamson, is, are they, because a lot of people listening and they might not have the money to go hire an attorney. You might not have the money to call my office and say, I have a traffic violation or a traffic offense, and they would, or traffic misdemeanor, and they would like to ask Mr. Williamson to go represent them. Are there any resources out there that you can tell the general public that they can use if they don't have money to pay an attorney? Are there any resources out there that they can fall back on? You're muted, Mr. Williamson.
100%. Look, I mean, I know, just like I said, a DWI is serious business. Most DWI attorneys are going to charge a retainer of anywhere from $4,000 to sometimes upwards of $6,000 to represent you in court. But the good news is that in the state of New York, under the county code, section 18B, New York State provides for a signed counsel. This is a public defender program that they have. They'll give you an assigned counsel if you meet the financial qualifications. So if you walk into court, you have a DWI, answering a desk appearance ticket for a DWI. I mean, you shouldn't go in there worrying. You can always talk to the clerk. You can always talk to the judge, and they'll assign you a 18B attorney immediately. And all you have to do is qualify for that. These attorneys are well versed in the vehicle and traffic law. I'm an 18B attorney. I have right now at least 4 to 5 clients that were assigned to me on the day of arraignment. As a matter of fact, most times the judge will assign those cases before the day of arraignment, and you'll be able to speak with your attorney beforehand so you can let them know the specific circumstances of your case. So you should never go in there worrying if you can't afford one.
Right. Thank you so much. And I want the listeners to do understand that when you say if you meet the qualification, the financial qualifications, a lot of times these attorneys are appointed or assigned to litigants who are below the poverty line. So your income has to be below a certain threshold. So you guys need to understand that part. So it's not necessarily automatic that you're going to walk into court and you're going to tell the clerk or judge, like, Judge, I need a court-appointed attorney because I cannot afford one. But you have to actually meet the criteria of not having the income. And a lot of times people, I'm not advising anyone to work under the table, but a lot of times those employees who work on the table or they're 1099 employee wage earner, sometimes a lot of times they're the ones who qualify to have a court assigned or court appointed attorney from the 18B panel. So it's not automatic, but it's a resource that is available to you if you're in need of an attorney and you can't afford one. You can't afford the legal fees on your own. You can always tell the court, tell the judge, and if you meet the requirement, you may be able to get that resource available to you. So, based on the advice Mr. Williamson has given you today, I would say one of the things you should always do when you're faced with traffic infractions, if you're stopped, if a ticket is issued to you, if you're arrested for a DWI, because Mr. Williams, before I even say that, let me ask you, is there instances where somebody's arrested for a DWI?
Yes. Aggravating factors. And I'm not talking about an 1192 AA, which is an aggravated DWI. That means that you blew a blood alcohol content of a 0.18 or higher. Remember, I said a regular DWI is a 0.08. But when somebody's arrested, as a matter of fact, you usually get arrested on all DWIs immediately. You'll usually get arrested. And another important thing, and this is why you want to have an attorney, is because if you have any aggravating factors, like you damage property, if you hit somebody, if you hit another driver in a car, that's an aggravating factor, and you're certainly going to be arrested for that.
Right. So guys, be careful out there. You don't want to be arrested for driving while under the influence, because you don't want to end up being arrested. Because if you're arrested, then you have to call. And if you call my office, chances are I'm going to have you call Mr. Williamson, and Mr. Williamson is going to be the one to deal with it. Guys, I'm going to take a quick break and we will be right back. Today, I am your host, Shellon Washington. This is The Law and You. I have today my colleague, James Williamson, joining me discussing issues related to traffic law violations. We will be right back. So this is attorney Shellon Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100. Hi, guys. Welcome back to The Law and You. I'm your host, Attorney Shellon Washington. And again, this afternoon, I have with me my colleague, attorney at law, James Williamson. He's also associated as of counsel to the Washington Law Firm. And if any of you are facing an issue with a traffic violation, I've showed you before the number that you should call. Now, Mr. Williamson, we're going to go back quickly to some of the issues that we've discussed as it relates to traffic misdemeanors. The DWI, how do you classify the DWI? Is it a criminal law issue, or is it just a violation? Could you explain to the viewers what is the DWI? How do you classify it?
Sure. Well, look, as I'm sure most viewers likely know, in the state of New York and most states, you have 3 levels of crime. All the way at the top is going to be a felony. In the middle is going to be a misdemeanor. And all the way at the end is going to be a non-criminal disposition, which they call a violation. A DWI is classified as a traffic misdemeanor. It is a Class A misdemeanor. And as you know, a Class A misdemeanor is any crime punishable by up to 1 year in prison. One other thing I should mention is that with the DWI, because the state has such a high public interest in protecting the health and welfare of its citizens, your license is going to be suspended immediately on the day of arraignment. So that's another reason you would need an attorney, is because if you have to drive to school, work, doctor's appointments, you would need an attorney to navigate that minefield that is obtaining a hardship license during the pendency of the action. But it is a Class A misdemeanor, to answer Ms. Washington's question.
Right. So one thing is, again, I want to make clear to you guys, just bear in mind the issue of the child support, the issue of your license being important to going back and forth to work. So I want you to be careful and think about anytime you're stopped and issued a ticket, or if you're stopped for a traffic violation, especially if you're just a licensed driver but you're undocumented. This program is really important for you. If you are a licensed driver in the state of New York but you're an unlicensed immigrant, just know that the state of New York is what we call a sanctuary state. It means it's a state where immigrants who are undocumented under federal laws are free to live and to work and to thrive. But one of the setbacks to that privilege that the state of New York gives you is, your license has to be protected. And if you get into trouble because you drink while you drink and you drive, or you drive without your license, you heard Mr. Williams spoke earlier about people getting into their cars and driving. And I want to ask a little bit more about that issue. You did mention that a ticket could be issued to somebody who, let's say you left your license at home. You get into the car and you're stopped by a police officer. Could you explain to the public what happens in a situation like that? How do you get that disposed of, that type of ticket?
Well, a ticket like that, you would want to explain the circumstances to your attorney. What it sounds like Ms. Washington is talking about right now is, you had an inadvertent, the mistake here was inadvertent. You leave your license at home, you get pulled over for whatever reason, you get an aggravated unlicensed operation. You can easily explain that away to your attorney. And remember, I said one of the things that can get you down to a violation would be if you showed proof of clearance. So this would be pretty much an easy one, so long as you don't do anything in the interim that gets your license suspended. So showing proof of your license, a valid license, or proof of clearance, could assist you in getting a non-criminal disposition of a BTL 509, which is classified as an unlicensed operator as opposed to an aggravated unlicensed operation.
Right. That brings me to another question, just for the sake of immigration purposes. Now, if that person forgot the license, you said they go to court and the lawyer is able to negotiate or plea bargain at whatever it is, the charge down to something less. Is there any way, or is there any situation where that charge could be removed altogether? They could get it removed completely? Because as we said before, if somebody's undocumented, but they have a driver's license, they have a very important interest to protect, which is their future ability to adjust their status in this country from undocumented to becoming a legal permanent resident. So is there a way to get that sort of charge removed 100% and just pay a court cost or surcharge, whatever it is that is required to pay to the court?
I mean, a lot of times there is, but you're just talking about the strength of the evidence. Usually it's going to be a factual error that the police officers made, or a factual error that was made in the DMV. Like, for instance, we talked about one reason somebody might have an aggravated unlicensed operation would be because of unpaid tolls. You would have to prove to the DA and to the people of the state of New York factually that there was some type of error, let's say with the traffic agencies that issued you your citation for not paying your tolls. If you had a discrepancy with your child support payments, which was one of the other ways that I talked about that somebody could have an unlicensed operation, you would have to prove that factually in court. Now, likely you're not going to have it done on the same date. It might take a few court appearances, but if you can prove this to the people of the state of New York, and I mean the ADA, then you can get those tickets dismissed. And in those circumstances, you would likely have the fine and the surcharge dismissed as well. And a fine and a surcharge on this is usually going to be about a $93 mandatory state surcharge. Some courts have court costs, which are a little bit cheaper, like $25. And you can even be heard on the fine and get those removed if you can prove that the charge was never proper in the first place. So yes,
right. I think that's more of the situations where I'm referencing where the charge is not proper, because I know of situations where I myself had the situation where I got in the car, the registration was in the car itself, and I'm stopped by not necessarily stopped, but I was driving and I was hit by a driver. The police officer came on the scene. He asked me for my registration, and I'm searching the dashboard and I can't locate it. So instead of him just saying, okay, you could just send proof of it in later, he issued a ticket to me. So now I'm referencing those type of situations. If somebody jumps into the car, they leave the wallet at home, they forgot the wallet, but they jumped into the car without a driver's license. I mean, now you could show your driver's license digitally, but let's say they don't even have it on the phone, and they got into the car, they got pulled over by the police officer. How do they get out of a ticket if the police officer said, well, you know what, I'm just going to issue you a ticket anyway, and just issue the ticket, even though the person do have a valid driver's license that is not revoked or suspended?
Now, aren't those situations just annoying? Seeing the situation Ms. Washington was talking about, somebody rear ends her in the back of the car. They hit her, and the cop checks and finds out that she doesn't have her registration or her license on her. Believe it or not, that's common. We have tons of tickets like that, every week. In that case, I wouldn't worry about it. You don't want to get mad at the police officer or anything like that. That can likely make your situation worse. Just go to court on the date which the police officer will give you on your ticket. They'll mail you a DAT, a desk appearance ticket. And when you go to court, you can just show that you were licensed at the time, although for whatever reason you didn't have your license on you. Now, you always want to carry your license with you, but it's a proof of fact, and the proof of fact that you want to show is that you actually had your license, in fact, at the time you were pulled over, in your constructive possession, even though you did not actually have it on you.
Right. And I think that's very informative, and that's something people need to understand. And that brings me to another issue, which you just mentioned in passing, arguing with police officers. And I think the public needs to understand, if you're pulled over for whatever reason and the police officer is giving you a ticket which you believe you shouldn't even be getting in the first place, you should never argue with a police officer. You should always, your first response should be to take the ticket and go to court and plea a case before the judge or the prosecutor, who generally plea bargain these cases. These cases, most times, it doesn't get to the judge, but the prosecutor and the attorney that you hire most times negotiate a deal that would get you something much, much lighter than what you would have gotten ordinarily. And I think that's one thing that why Ms. Williamson is referencing the fact that get an attorney. There are instances where you don't need to, but where it's something more serious, your best bet is to spend that money and hire an attorney. And not all cases is going to cost $4,000 or $5,000. Mr. Williamson was only referencing instances of DWI. Those types of cases are very, very costly because, number one, a lot of the times those people with DWI, you need to tell them, Mr. Williamson, a lot of the time they are not first-time offenders, sometimes not even second, sometimes third, and this is a factor that would affect you in an adverse manner if you have multiple infractions with the law as it relates to driving while under the influence. Do you want to talk a little bit more on that, Mr. Williamson's multiple tickets or multiple offenses of DWI?
Yes, 100%. So look, earlier we spoke about aggravating factors, aggravating factors such as hitting somebody with the car and injuring them. Somebody's in another car and you injure them. Those are going to be aggravating factors. But another thing that can really make your ability to get a reduced charge more difficult is having more than one DWI within a period of time. Usually, like for rule of thumb, if you get more than two within less than 5 years, you might get a DWAI, that's driving while ability impaired. Sometimes in legal jargon, we call that a sub 1 because it's subsection 1 of Vehicle and Traffic Law 1192. And I know that's a mouthful, but I think Ms. Washington has that archived so you can take a look back at it. But basically what happens is if you get more than one of those in a certain amount of time, 2 and 5 years, 3 and 10 years, you're almost certainly going to be precluded from getting an offer from the DA's office. So what does that mean? That means now that if you want to get a reduced charge or if you want to get that ticket dismissed, you're going to have to take that case to trial. But here goes the problem with going to trial, Ms. Washington. If you blow a 0.08 or higher, you're talking about a factual analysis. Unless you can prove some type of prosecutorial misconduct, you have to hire an expert to test the blood alcohol content machine. All right. Those machines have a margin of error of about maybe 1/10 of a percentage point. In other words, unless you blow a 0.08 right on the dot, it's almost a futile effort going to court. If you blow an aggravated, a 0.18 or higher, you're going to spend $1,500 on an expert for nothing because no expert is going to be able to get that test down below the legal limit. So you don't want to get more than 3 in a row because that's going to preclude you from being able to get a good, favorable offer from the DA. And as we said before, a favorable offer is a sub 1 or a DWAI, a violation, which is what you're looking for. It's the next best thing from getting it dismissed. And I hope that wasn't a mouthful, but
I think that was very informative. And thank you so much for sharing that information. Good afternoon, guys. This is 107.1 FM on the mark on Bench Top Radio. For you today, it's the Law and You program hosted by yours truly, Shellon Washington. Thank you so much, guys, for being here with us this afternoon, for staying. And I saw your contributions. I read all of your comments. And I saw Roderick Henry was saying he's thankful that he doesn't drive in the United States. He's thanking God he doesn't drive in the United States. Roderick, it's not that bad. It's just if you abide and you comply with the law, you will have no problems. But it's just that people sometimes break the law. Sometimes people just do stupid things. And sometimes it's innocent mistakes. And, you know, unfortunately, mistakes can cost people's lives, or it can cost you money. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much, James Williamson, for being here, for sharing this information with my audience. And we have come to the end of this program. This program is a 30 minutes program, The Law and You. I think we've just run a little bit over, just a few minutes, because we started a little bit late this afternoon. The program goes every Saturday at 4 p.m. Thank you so much. You've been a wonderful audience, and I will see you back again next week as we continue to discuss the law and you. Next week, we'll be discussing family law issues. So we'll get into it, and I may have another guest, or I will be here by myself, guys, but I'll see you again next week at 4 p.m. sharp. Thank you again so much. Thank you again, Mr. Williamson. If you want to say a closing anything to the audience before we go.
Yes, Mr. Henry, first off, it's not that bad. We'd love to have you in the United States, but if you do get into trouble, you know who to call. And everybody out there, you are in the best hands with Miss Washington, 100%.
Thank you so much, Mr. Williamson. And everyone, have a good rest of your Saturday. I'll see you again next week. So this is attorney Shellon Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.